So we shall continue with prayer, and then the next talk, hopefully we will get onto the vows. So we spoke about the essential need of prayer. We said need does not mean only the material, the worldly needs, as very often prayers are reduced to. But these are needs which are more essential and fundamental. So we said prayer gives that solidity, prayer gives that clarity, and prayer gives that integrity, which are very, very basic and unavoidable needs in the life of anyone. And from there we move to what it means to pray. So what is prayer? And I am very sure you may have so many definitions of prayer. Can you just tell me a few of them?
Communication with God.
Communication with God.
Or conversation.
Suppose if I don't converse, if I don't speak,
You don't get any response.
I see. So that means I must be speaking only. Suppose if I am remaining silent,
This communication or conversation not only it's through words, it also can be through our presence.
so but then you have to qualify, no? Communication normally implies immediately, oral communication. So, any other?
Raising one's heart and mind to God.
Raising one's heart. Suppose if you are not able to raise, there may be times you are not able to raise, as if we lie down only. Any other? No, what you said very correct. Why I was saying that way? You see, my brothers, any definition, okay, especially definitions of realities like prayer, seem to be very inadequate. You say one thing and then immediately, then what about the other aspects? So, maybe because of the very reality of prayer, which is so vast and so comprehensive that you cannot just contain it within the few words, few formulations. It always evades any constriction, any limitation, delimitation. So that's why, while there can be varieties, multiple definitions of prayer, but as I reflect, as I think in my own simple way, for me, I just think praying is nothing but loving. Praying is loving. So, loving God. Perhaps I believe this can include all the aspects. When you love, certainly there is communication, there is speaking, there is listening, there is gazing on the Lord, some say, fixing one's attention on God. So when there is loving, there is also raising one's heart and mind to God. As he said, so when there is loving, there is that enjoying the presence of God. So everything becomes possible when there is love. So, praying is loving God, praying is being in love with God. And still taking little bit insight from my favorite philosopher on whom I did my philosophy thesis, Bernard Lonergan, a Canadian Jesuit priest, famous theologian and philosopher of contemporary times, just died only in 1984. So he also uses expression like falling in love with God. Of course, he uses it in some other context, speaking about conversion. Because very often conversion we think only in the religious or the spiritual sense, but he also speaks beautifully about intellectual conversion, emotive, affective or emotional conversion, moral conversion, cultural conversion, then religious conversion. So, and now for our purpose, so praying is falling in love with God. And maybe at this point, my brother, it may be just worth the context to also see the difference from falling in love with the humans. So, falling in love with God and falling in love with the humans. There is a huge contrast. Huge contrast. So, with God and with the humans. Falling in love with God, I am not, of course, passing judgment on human relationships as such. I am not generalizing, but then I am referring more to the deviated and unworthy and unhealthy relationships and friendships. And unfortunately, in the present times, such unhealthy and deviated friendships and relationships are increasing in the church and in the religious life. So I'm speaking more about them. And of course, also the outside relationships and friendships. Falling in love, that's what you, so you hear this expression very often, I have fallen in love. So, falling in love with God, it will always raise us. And falling in love with the humans, you fall and you remain fallen. And that's what you can see very often. Falling in love with God, it will actually make us more whole and wholesome. And falling in love with the humans mostly makes us partial and fragmented. You will not be able to see the reality as it is. So that's what you can also see. The person becomes more divided. And that's what you can see sometimes when a boy and a girl fall in love for each other. You see, for them, the whole rest of the world closes. So that way, you can also say, falling in love with God makes us more clear-sighted. Whereas here, you become totally unclear and confused. So falling in love with God will help us to be well guided, rightly guided. And falling in love with the humans very often makes us misguided. Falling in love with God makes us revitalized. So it re-energizes us, fills us with new energies. Very true it is. Whereas this you can say, often it drains us of the energies. Drains. Falling in love with God will make us more and more steady, more stable. Whereas, very often falling in love with the humans make the people unstable and stumble. Falling in love with God makes us sober, awakened. Whereas falling in love with the humans will make us more, very often, maybe dissociated, or you can put it in a simple way, unwise, not able to really understand and discern. So, falling in love with God will make us more integrated, whereas this one will make us more disintegrated. In that context, you might have heard that observation or that remark, love makes blind or something. You heard, no? Love makes the lovers blind. I say not only blind, totally no organ, no faculty functions. Blind, total handicap. Hand will come into the cap. That's all. As I said, I am not judging, I am not also generalizing. Surely, friendships, relationships are very much needed and important. But then, maybe in the context of the vow of chastity, I will honestly observe at least 60% of the present relationships and the friendships which develop between the consecrated people and the others, whether it is outsiders or other consecrated people. This is what I see as great possibilities for deviations. I will tell. Very often very shallow, very short-lived, need-based, and then body-ending. So at least 60%. So that is why it is in that context you see when people fall in love, what happens? Murders take place, and hostility, persecution, enormous harm and destruction in the name of love, you see. So anyhow, in this context of loving God and falling in love with God, we can clearly see the difference. And that's why very often, my brothers, today especially, love for God, the passion for God, the zeal for God is taking a back seat because of deviated and unhealthy relationships. That is a fact today. So, we have to check and see. So, praying is loving, we said, and then, okay, now what does it mean to love? Because we say, yes, we must love God, and then we also quote Mark 12, 28 to 34. The greatest commandment, love your God with all your mind, with all your soul, with all your heart, and love your neighbor as yourself. So, the greatest commandment, Mark 12, 28 to 34. Yes, okay. But then what does it mean? So we need not think so much to find out what it means to love God. Just let us take some simple components, the ingredients of the human love. So when you love someone so deeply, so it's nothing wrong to love, because God has given us a heart to love. As long as the heart is pure, as long as the love is pure, as long as it does not lead to what is harmful, what is really coming on the way of our commitment, as long as it is beneficial, it is all the more recommendable. That's why constantly we have to check and see what is the quality of our human friendships and relationships. But then, whatever it is, you take some ingredients of the human love. When you love someone so deeply, what is there? There is that deep craving for that person. So, you think of that person unceasingly. And when you love someone so deeply, you also crave, you also desire to spend time with that person. So which means you seek the company of the person. You enjoy, you relish the company. And then, when you love someone so deeply, you also are ready to do anything and everything for that person. So, for me, this is how I think of loving God. Now, just apply the same simple elements to loving God. Because these are the elements you find in any genuine, deep human love. So, if I really love God, the very simple question is, do I have that deep craving for Him? As the psalmist exclaims in Psalm 42, like the deer that yearns for the running streams, like the deer that craves for the waters, just as a barren land may crave for the drops of rain, for the water, does my heart crave for my God if I really love Him? Many are able to say, surely we say, and many also say to us, may not be wrong, I love you. This has become very, very common expression. I love you, I miss you. Very good. But then, as I always ask my brother, how many of us can sincerely, with feeling, with genuine feeling, can say to God, God, I love you and I miss you so much. I love you. My heart beats for you. My heart vibrates for you. And I just cannot bear your absence. I really miss you. How many can really say? That's what sometimes you hear people. So I love you so much. I give you my heart. I tell. Already I do not know what to do with my heart and what I will do with your heart. Or then some others say, if you love me so much, will you give your heart to me? I have only one heart. And if I give that, then what I will do? It's like a boy and girl, okay, meeting together, and the boy says, I love you so much. And then these girls, always they want to put their lovers, their friends to test. Okay, you love me so much. If you love me so much, will you die for me? And the fellow says, my love is undying love. So you need to know how to respond also. Otherwise, how many times to how many people you can go on dying? You cannot simply go on giving your life. Okay, we have only one life. And everybody will ask, will you die for me? Will you die for me? Nobody will ask, will you live for me? Will you live with me? Okay. In the lighter way. Okay. So, how much intense is my longing for Him? The saints, my brothers, you know very well. What was the intensity of their craving for Him? It's a burning desire. And in fact, just to take the Romans 8:35 and the following, the way Paul expresses, what can separate me from the love of Christ? No famine, no shipwreckness, no nakedness, no persecution, no affliction, no adversity, nothing of this world, and nothing of the upper world, nothing of the underworld. Nothing and no one can separate me from the love of Christ. For me to live is Christ and to die is Christ. It is no longer I who live, it is Christ who lives in me. What a passion, my brother. That man who went through enormous suffering, affliction, persecution, troubles of all the sorts, and then how passionate he was. So intensity. So these saints, these holy men and women are the people who are charged with love for God. Charged. So what is my intention?